Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Well, hello again, and welcome to episode 168 of There's Still Time, the AFTN podcast. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
I'm Jay Duke.
And I'm Zachary Meisenheimer.
And for this first podcast of our roundtable discussions that we're going to bring you, we're going to have a look at some of the things that's been happening since the season wrapped up, Whitecaps-wise and elsewhere in MLS. And we're also going to bring you our fourth annual State of the Whitecaps chat with Carl Robinson. So, kicking things off, there's been a lot of comings and goings already with the Whitecaps. A couple of surprises from players maybe that have been released, a couple not so much. We'll start with the big name that's been released. Pedro Morales, no big surprise, no longer here. Just some thoughts as to what Pedro maybe brought the team over the last 3 years and how big a loss is he going to be moving forward?
I think he brought a lot of excitement initially. But there's the pinpoint passing, the execution of the plays up the court of the field. I thought he brought a lot, but it's just for some reason, as the season went along, he would just break down. And I think maybe it was just he wasn't built to play on turf.
Well, first off, he wasn't cut, right? Like, his option was not taken.
Yeah.
And then it was nice for once to see, like, a public, this guy's not coming back. He can say his farewell, even though he was already not in the city. It was kind of nice to see that. I think Pedro did provide that, excitement.
He was a player we hadn't seen before since MLS has started.
In our city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think he was. There was great potential there, right? Like, if he was able to play at his top level all the time, I think things would have obviously gone quite a bit differerently. I think injuries were like. And Michael, you know from going to training, but like injuries were a huge issue. I remember going to training session once. I'm like, why are you sitting on the side? What's going on? Like, I got this problem with my knee or my calf or my quad or whatever. There was always something that was like keeping him out. And like you
Rick
always
Celebrini,
knew
I saw him like he was a regular. He like had
Who saw more, his wife
or
Rick Celebrini?
Yeah, he there was always something that was like hindering him, like holding him back from being his best physically, it felt like. And yet, I think he was unfairly criticized in some quarters for, I think he tried to fight through that, right? Like, he always wanted to play and always wanted to try and contribute, and I think that's something that people forget often.
I think now that we can look back on his whole kind of tenure, I actually like the type of signing that Pedro Morales was. It was the right type of signing. A guy playing in a league much better than the MLS, out of favor with his current coach, but with plenty of technical skill. It's the right type of signing, and it did seem to start well. He provided a lot for us, but it seemed almost like either the system didn't fit him or he didn't fit the system, and there was no way to. By the end of it, you're right. The injuries stacked up. The chemistry didn't seem quite right with him in the team, and he wasn't producing at a level that you need out of a DP playmaker. And the problem is he had so many other deficiencies in other areas of his game. You can't just keep him on the club to spray those 60-yard balls around when he didn't really defend that well. He didn't get into the box. He didn't score very many goals. He didn't actually make that many great final passes. So given the limitations of the players around him, he's not a player you can afford on the club.
I think one of the things is I've looked back on his tenure, I looked back at the numbers, and his numbers are actually pretty solid, right? Like, he played something like 89 league games for us, had something like 23, 24, 25 goals.
How many of those were penalties?
PKs, yeah, I knew he was going to say that.
They're goals. Who cares if they're from the spot or not?
I agree, but just to say that he's like a goal scoring.
I never said he was a goal scorer.
Okay,
I was saying he contribute. His
absolutely.
contribution.
And
24, 25 goals and 22 assists.
Yeah,
And
that's probably more important.
Yeah.
He was an amazing penalty taker too. Like,
Yes.
he was automatic. He missed one his entire time here, which is fantastic.
And when you look at his stats, he also contributed in some of our biggest games, which is maybe hard to remember. But if you look at his numbers against our 4 biggest rivals, he played something like 22 games and had like, I think it was like 10 goals in those 22 games and like 8 or 9 assists. So like when we played Toronto, Montreal, Seattle, and Portland, he was usually a huge contributor to our success against those teams. You look at even the Voyageurs Cup, he played something like 7 games. He scored against all 4 teams we played in the Voyageurs Cup, and contributed. For me, the biggest part is he contributed. He was here for 3 years. He contributed to 3 trophies, 2 Cascadia Cups, and of course, probably most importantly, our first Voyageurs Cup.
No, 100%, I agree with that, and I think like you were talking about the system. I think the problem with the way the system was, he wasn't durable enough to be play as a number 10, where he was banging up against the center backs in the MLS. He didn't have the endurance to play the box to box, and he wasn't defensive enough to play the holding midfield role. So he was almost like he was kind of a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So I think that kind of hurt him a little.
It felt like when he got here and he was seemingly more fit, supposedly tired, but seemingly more fit, that he fit the number 10 better.
Yeah.
And then
but that wore down after a while.
I don't know if that wore down, but I think maybe him not being as fit, struggling with different injuries,
he seemed
made him less effective in that higher up role.
Seemed like when opposition teams got physical with him, he kind of backed off. And I can understand that because he's not probably used to it or whatever, but that's what I saw when I was watching.
I have still yet to see a string of the time of more than 45 minutes when Pedro Morales has looked good as a true number 10. And for whatever reason it is, I think a lot of that stuff is true, that, the physicality, but how often have you seen him with the ball just try and along the ground play a through ball to a player, running into the channel? It very rarely happened. Now, whether that's by design or whether that's even when he was given plenty of opportunities as the number 10, it did not work out, and it's not just his fault. A lot of the time he'd be standing up there by himself with Hurtado in front of him, and you're out of options. He would never get the ball, so he'd have to come back deep. There was a lot of systemic issues with the team that added to it. But when things were going well, or he did get a stretch as a number 10, it didn't look good for him either.
I think one of the things you touched on the other day is as how we played and how we performed. I think it was one of the reasons also why he kept on dropping back deep, because he wanted to be on the ball more, and sometimes he wasn't getting it when he was further up because we weren't providing him any service. We weren't providing him any play. And I think some of the times it felt like he dropped deep to get on the ball, especially earlier on. One of the other things I think when you think of Pedro Morales that people have talked about in different circles since he's left, and even while he was here, is the idea of him as being a captain and what kind of captain he was. And I think when you listen to the different conversations, I think some of them are a little bit again unfair. I think there's a bit of people are being a little bit ethnocentric. They're seeing what is a captain only in like our context here, where
Canadian captain,
North American sports kind of captain.
I disagree with that. Like, soccer captains have to be vocal on the pitch, and he was not vocal on the pitch. And that's South Americans are not vocal on the pitch. That's what they say. Pedro said that himself.
Right, but I think that often in other parts of the world, the captain is your most talented player, is your best player. And I think you saw that, especially the early part again, you saw the huge role he played in. All the other players, or many of the other players, looked up to him with a great deal of respect because of his abilities, because of where he'd been, because of what he'd done. Especially the younger players. Like, you look at Marco Bustos, and like how much he appreciated Pedro's influence in him
He
as
was
a player
just
and
happy
as a
to have
person.
another Chilean at the club.
Exactly.
No, I disagree with you about the most talented player should be the captain. I think
I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying
it seems like
that's some people's philosophy.
Okay, I disagree with that because I think that person's going to be a leader no matter what. Why not put the captain on somebody that actually leads and is willing to lead, and that way you have two guys who are going to be the forward. I've always disagreed with that. The talent player just stick the armband on him.
And not only that, but it's the club and the gaffer who should be the one who are picking who their club captain is going to be, and they should be able to dictate what type of captain that they want to have. So I think that the club would like, from statements that Lenarduzzi has made,
but he's not picking the captain.
Is he or isn't he? I think
he shouldn't be.
The word before was he didn't want David Ousted as captain because of the way that David shouted at players, and he didn't think that set a good example.
Well, I think we're going into a different conversation that we can have.
To tie up the Pedro Morales captain thing, I'll say is that I do think that the club, I think Robinson likely as well, wants someone with a little bit more, pardon the Canadian term, but a little more grit and a little more to be a little more vocal and to stand up and be counted, both on the pitch and in the dressing room when something is needed.
And it's clear by some of his post game comments after a few games where he was saying leadership is a big problem in this club, and he said that. Robbo, after some couple post-game interviews. So it's clear that he was kind of saying that there needs to be a change.
Fair enough. That was 2016.
Yeah.
So
it's also something we're going to ask Robbo about.
So when you look at when the decision was made, I think it was I think having Pedro as captain was good for those first 2 years. I think that the reason he was selected was he was the kind of person that the culture of the dressing room was going to be shaped around, in terms of personality, background, all those kinds of skill, all those kinds of things. And so I think it worked really well when we were performing okay. And you look at this year where we did not perform well, where for Pedro as an individual, the injuries or the hampering, the way he was hampered in not being able to perform as well, I think made our results not go as well. You saw all that kind of, not implode, but you kind of all kind of degrade, right?
Last thing we'll say on Pedro is, looking at his stats, from his 3 seasons, this was actually his most accurate season. It was his best season for shooting, 67% shooting accuracy. Year 1 was 49, year 2 was 47, because he would just shoot from anywhere and they were nowhere on target. His passing accuracy was also the best at 83%, but he contributed 9 goals, he had 10 in year 1, 3 goals that weren't penalties in each year. So it's like year 1 he had 7 penalties, year 2 he had 2 penalties, and then this past season he had 6 penalties.
Yeah, again, for me, penalties, they're goals, right?
They're goals, but anyone can put it away.
I'll say one thing.
Can they though?
Well, maybe not if you're Justin.
Maybe we win a Voyageurs Cup a year earlier or so, if that's the case.
True. So, moving on from Pedro, but keeping with the captaincy thing. Obviously, we don't know exactly who's coming in yet. And there could be like a really senior guy that comes in, or a new number 10 to replace him, that may be the automatic captain or the choice for the
when
captain.
they bring back Atiba, that should say maybe.
I thought you meant Harris for a second. Yeah,
He just signed in Dallas. Good for Atiba.
Looking at who we've got there just now, we've obviously got David Edgar, who's, we don't know how long he's going to miss after his hit and run accident, which was absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
It's just crazy that even happened. You've got him, you've got Ousted, you've got Harvey. Bolaños, I don't know if he's maybe somebody that would even want to be the captain.
Be similar in style to Pedro, I think, if you chose him.
Yeah. Who would be your choice right now from the players that we have signed to be the captain, just quickly?
If he starts playing again like 2015, I say Kendall Waston. If he's committed, he's ready to go.
He'll miss a lot of games.
I could see that only in the way that I could see them challenging him.
Yeah.
To say, listen, you are a lead. You are.
He's
the
already
leader,
vocal. He's vocal
right?
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's. I think the club likes having someone who is a big persona, someone they can put on match day guides to be the club captain. I could see Robbo challenging Waston and saying, I need you. You are our leader.
Yeah.
Here's the armband to prove it. And I want to challenge you to stop the reckless tackles and he's never going to get away from being suspended. He's both unfairly targeted and quite justfully. He's suspended with good reason quite frequently.
Yeah.
So he needs to clean some of that up. And part of that is just who he is. And he's going to soak up yellow cards and get suspensions that way. That's okay. But he's got to clean up some of the other stuff.
Maybe it'll fix his discipline if he's got the captaincy.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Maybe they use it as a way to challenge him.
Yeah.
And I could see it. I don't know if it would be my first choice, but I could see them
The only issue I would have with it is, he's really performing well at the world stage. And he's probably garnering some interest from Europe. And how long does he stay? It could even gone this January transfer window. There's a possibility that
if he had a good season, I think that would have a chance.
With the club, he's not having a good season, but he's having a really good season with Costa Rica. And Costa Rica's doing really well, and with his new beard color and everything like that, he's gonna get a lot of attention.
Grandpa Waston.
Yeah, exactly.
Same as Pedro's new hair.
I think he's done it so that the referees don't recognise him.
Or maybe they say, "Oh, he's a senior. He's not gonna. He's not doing anything."
No, but I do. You talk about that. I wonder how much not having or how serious David Edgar's. Or not serious. David Edgar's injury might play in all those kind of discussions and options.
I thought he was going to be the automatic choice for captain.
He's got to be the favourite.
Yeah. He's like, when you speak to him, he is a leader. And it's like, he's been around the game. He's not afraid to call out his teammates.
He takes responsibility for his own actions too.
Now, obviously, we don't know what Pedro was like in the locker room behind closed doors. Maybe he did stand up and have a go at people. You just don't see it because he always seemed quite mild-mannered. The most aggressive I saw him was that little spat he had with Houston at the end of the season. And you wonder, where is that passion maybe behind closed doors that you don't see? Clearly it isn't, I don't think, otherwise that whole situation wouldn't even have happened. But Edgar, when you talk to him, and Robbo's kind of hinted that he brought him in to kind of mix up the locker room in the summer. When you're not playing well yourself, it's maybe hard to call out the other players, and I think that's maybe where he fell down a little bit to start with. But he was just finding his groove, and then he finds his groove, and then the season ends. The
only problem that I see that this would... I think David Edgar would be a good choice. He's Canadian. He's got lots of experience. He does seem to have the type of personality that you would want as a captain. What worries me, and I don't think that there's a huge issue skill-wise for him, but I do think that there's going to be... Because he struggled early, but he came on well towards the end of the year. I would have no problem marking him down as one of my starting center backs. But you still have two MLS everyday starters in Tim Parker and Kendall Waston. And you know that they're not going to bench Waston. Like you say, Steve, there's too many opportunities for him to maybe be sold on to another club if someone decides that they like his Costa Rica play. So how are they going to address that? And I think Tim Parker is at the point in his career where he has shown it that he's ready to play in the MLS every day now.
He wants to be a star.
I think Tim Parker will be a captain soon. Like in the 3-4 years, he could be the captain.
So how does the club, if the club wants to say that David Edgar is my club captain, he's going in the starting lineup every game then. Yep. You can't have your club captain sitting on the bench.
Yeah, and it's him and Waston
then it's got to be him and Waston, which means so there is a bit of a knock-on effect there of naming him club captain. You almost are saying that we got to move Tim Parker. Mm-hmm. Because his value is high right now. The Americans love him.
Yeah,
and I think it would be a shame because I think that probably over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, Tim Parker will probably be the best center back of the three of them.
I like to keep Tim Parker one more year, even if he started. Because then you never know what's happening with Waston.
It's whether he wants to stay.
Yeah,
because there were some murmurs that he wants to be a starter. They did give him a new contract, but he's great trade bait.
Yeah, he deserves to be a starter though too. It's different. It's different than players that haven't shown that they. He not 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 games. Like he played an entire season where he deserved it, and even this season, I thought when he played, he was never the worst defensive player that we had in a on a team where we had some pretty abysmal days defending, and he did okay.
He did as well a job to protect them from that right side too. he did a pretty good job from that side. Zach, who's your choice for captain if you had a choice?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to look past people like David Osted, David Edgar, and Kendall Waston. The comment you made before about people in different places expressing their concerns about David Osted are probably them doing things that they say they wouldn't do, but and so that should to me be ignored. My biggest concern with David Osted is I'm one of those people who personally doesn't like a goalkeeper being your captain.
I like a defender, but not necessarily a goalkeeper.
Yeah, I prefer not a goalkeeper. You got him running all over the pitch to talk to the referee and all that kind of stuff.
He does that anyway.
But why? Like this is a weird thing too, because like there's nothing written in the laws of the game that allow for a captain to go and speak. I mean, if they gave Ousted the armband and they're still playing Edgar, Edgar can still go and talk to the ref.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's no I don't actually disagree with you that I don't like necessarily that, but I don't know why I don't like it, because it doesn't make any sense. Any player can go up and argue with any of the refs if they want to, which I think is stupid and is one of the reasons why the Whitecaps have gotten into the trouble that they have, is because they're notorious as a team who's a bit chippy, a bit reckless, and everybody on the club, including its coach, is notorious around the league for berating the officials at all times. And that's never have you ever seen a ref back down because a player or a coach is going after him? No. So I think that's a little bit of that's kind of a moot point. Whether or not your keeper carries the armband.
Yeah, I don't like. I could Kendall Waston. I could see doing it and doing fine. And I honestly I agree with you guys when you said that this maybe will help him elevate his game in such a way that maybe he avoids some of those more unfortunate decisions that have led to suspensions. I also David Edgar. I think he's already, like, the moment he came in, he was like a captain on the pitch. There's stories of him, expressing himself strongly to his teammates on the field when they're not performing well.
That's how it should be.
Are pretty awesome. I could see any of the three of those. For me, you talk about how does maybe choosing one of the center backs as a captain impact what our tandem will look like at the back, assuming we stay with a back four. We also didn't, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but is what is Christian Dean's role this year in terms of, is he going to be healthy enough, and is he going to be that player that he was in preseason last year, where it's like, how do we keep this guy out of the starting lineup?
Yeah, I mean, so many questions, but I mean, centre backs is definitely an area of the field that there's not going to be any new additions. We've got 5 with Cole Seiler, and as long as no one goes anywhere, that's how it's going to stay. Elsewhere in the defence, though, we have brought in our only kind of new signing of the season so far, Shannon Williams from Houston.
He replaces Fraser Aird and Jordan Smith, who are officially out.
And it kind of came out of the blue, really. It was a name I wouldn't have thought of. It's a guy that I don't really know too much about. I didn't really pay that much attention to him when he played for Houston. Giles Barnes is quite high on him, and Giles Barnes has been in Houston recently, training with the likes of Will Bruin and Shannon Williams and a few of the other Houston guys, just keeping fit over the winter. What's your thought on Williams? How much do you know about him? Do you think he is going to be the starting right back, and is he going to be the answer to what was a disastrous position last year?
I think first off, we knew early last year or halfway through last year that Jordan Smith wasn't coming back. His loan was not going to be renewed. Fraser Aird, he loves Rangers and he really wants to be at Rangers. I think you've written about that and talked about that, and
he's not going to get back in the team. So
so we'll see what happens with.
But
with
I think
Fraser.
he wants to be just basically closer.
Yeah,
maybe he gets loaned out to a Scottish team.
Yeah, he can play for another team and go and watch them.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's probably what he's going to end up doing.
And we wish them all the best. And those who are supporters of the Canadian national team, those who are
not if he stays for Rangers.
No, those who support the Canadian national team obviously want to see him do well because they like to see him contribute to that side as well. Yeah, Williams is I think interesting choice. It'll maybe it'll fulfill we'll have that old West Knight feel of someone who can throw the ball into the box on
Yeah.
throw-ins in the final third.
That's
so
about the only thing I know of that he has a long throw.
And
a different kind of weapon that we haven't had for a while.
And he attacks in the box too. He's been in the box on set pieces, and he has scored. The goals he scored is usually in those positions.
It is a bit of an uninspiring signing.
But maybe that's what you need.
Which is, and that's just it. And part of
You need a solid right back.
I'm going to kind of circle around here and go back to the center back conversation, in that I kind of wish that we were in this situation and had Fraser again next year, because I would have loved to see like a 5-3-2 or and then you can have your three center backs on. You're not worried about a guy like Fraser on one side. Harvey's pretty good offensively. De Jong is more of a wing back than he is a
winger.
Or a winger than he is a left back. So it actually would have worked really well if you had
Brett Levi's would have been playing fine in that
exactly.
spot.
He would have been great as a wing back, and it would have lined up perfectly. Unfortunately, it looks, with a signing like Williams, it kind of looks like maybe, unless they're just looking for a bit of flexibility, that they're looking for a proper right back. It is a bit uninspiring, but like you say, that might be what we need. And if Robinson, as he should be, is looking to the midfield as to where he wants to have his major changes this year, and possibly with a new striker up front or something like that, then yeah, maybe you just want a pretty affordable domestic, ho-hum right back to kind of bed in the rest of your back line.
I personally think like nobody was celebrating when Steven Beitashour was traded for.
Oh, I don't think that's true. There's a lot of people.
I know. The people who knew MLS knew they were, but there was no massive. Oh my God! Look at this signing.
Well, I think even on the podcast we were pretty positive about Beitashour, and we were, because I remember we were discussing how disappointed we were that he didn't provide as much attacking as we thought he would have, because he was so good in San Jose. But what
I'm trying to say is like he wasn't a guy that flies all over the place. He's not a superstar. Shane Williams can get up the field. He's athletic enough. He's not going to provide everything, but he can do a little bit of everything, and he won't hurt you defensively.
Jay used the word uninspiring, but really, what did you expect? Like, we weren't going to go and sign another Lee Young Pyo.
Right.
We weren't going to go spend a lot of money at the right back position. Like
That's why they traded Beitashour.
For me, the bigger thing that I'm more interested in is who will be our backup right back. Because for Tim's sake, I hope it's not Tim Parker.
I agree.
I hope there's someone.
And I think that's the right approach to take. Is that you have a guy who will be able to contribute, even if he's not the best right back in the league, as long as he'll be okay, and then go after a younger guy who that maybe can develop over the course of, with some different tools, maybe more attacking ability or something like that, to play as your backup right back, and push Williams to be a good everyday MLS right back.
And I know we talked about this before we started recording or whatever, and it's part of a bigger development discussion, but to me, ideally, Caden Chung continues to develop. I know there was ups and downs last year, or there were some pros and cons this season last year.
He's at least a year away from even looking
sniffing at the MLS,
I think, but
he's got promise.
I agree. I would love for that situation to come to fruition, and us have a residency guy to come in and push, a la Levis, at left back. But I don't think it's possible.
Personally, if you look at the backup right back spot right now, I like the draft. Maybe if they're to find somebody. There's a kid from Germany, actually.
Ausgezeichnet.
From Louisville. Plays at Louisville, Tim Kubel. And he can be available at wherever the Whitecaps are picking at 7 or 8 or whatever.
That would make sense.
Caden's
Caden's not
trained by Dortmund, which will upset you, but still it'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, Caden's not ready. As Jay says, he's at least a year away. He got burned a couple of times. Other teams targeted him a lot in USL. On the whole, though, he did stand up to it, but there were games where he struggled to get back. He struggled on the defensive side.
Yeah, and he's got to learn that.
But hopefully he learns from that.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's good for him that they're targeting him.
The big problem with Caden, though, is he's lightweight.
Yeah, he's
and
quite small.
I don't know how
but he's
only
only
possibly
he's
fall.
only 16
when you're talking
or
physically.
17.
Yeah.
okay.
He's only 16, 17. He's still got
I'm
time to develop.
17. Can you really put on muscles like that? With
Jay and I could help him with that.
The USL is the perfect spot for him
Yeah.
right now. He's playing against men much bigger than him. He's playing, at a level where he can get challenged and get burned, but also be a positive influence on that team. And I think that's the perfect spot for my hope.
Most people that train athletes, they don't want younger people lifting weights at 17 or 16 or whatever. They want them when they get to 18, 19, that's when they want them to start lifting weights. So I don't see him putting on weight until that time anyways.
Just before we speak to Robbo, we covered like some areas that need to be improved. Right back was obviously one of them. Striker, number 10 with Pedro going. There's been some names thrown about. I was told that, not linked to the Whitecaps, but there's an Argentine guy at River Plate that is wanting to come to MLS. A number 10, there's a number 10 at Las Palmas and La Liga that's wanting to come to MLS. Have to wonder whether they might be on Robbo's radar.
There's MLS site reported a defensive mid, David Guzman, who has also been, you said, linked to Portland.
I think he's been closely. There's been a few reports that he is signing with
Portland. Maybe he's on the Vancouver's negotiation list in Portland.
Is that to replace Char or to play next to him?
I believe to play next to him because they've played either Jewsbury or who's retired now, or Zamansky has played beside him. So they've usually been playing a second. So that's probably where he's going. That makes a bit of sense there too.
The only persistent Whitecap rumour has been Rommel Kyoto coming back. I say coming back because he played here and was in hospital here. But coming to Vancouver. Some folks said he might come as a DP, which to me would be
that's too
crazy.
Much. No.
To bring him in as a DP.
It would, but his performance in the Olympics, I think, really,
I would say
in terms of his value in the.
I would say he's
market.
Bolaños money if he gets anything.
Hopefully.
Around Bolaños getting paid.
I don't hope he's a DP,
but would you like to see him here? And if he is here, would you like to see him as the main striker or the second striker?
I think second striker.
It has to be. Yeah,
I'm hoping.
And it doesn't. If you sign Kyoto, we have you'd have to assume that Barnes or Kudo or both are gone for sure.
Well, Barnes is the biggie with his money,
right? And you think Barnes is probably likely to leave, but even Kudo, you might assume might also be leaving. Yeah. Hurtado's staying. That makes sense as your fourth striker, say.
Should be three.
Third or fourth striker.
He should be three, like we said before in a previous podcast. If he's not three, then he should be gone.
Fine. Either way.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I agree with you. I've come around a little bit on Hurtado. I think towards the end of last year, he proved he can be a very useful part of an MLS team, where even before, I was the first guy saying, you got to get rid of him. Like, he's terrible even as a fourth.
Yeah.
I think he proved that he could hold up the ball. He could defend from the front a little better than he has before.
He's a confidence player as well. Like when he starts to get a few goals.
You say that, but he's never happened. This is never. He's had one.
Spells.
No. Even when he's contributing and he's setting up goals, or he still plays well when he still builds that confidence when he's contributing.
And he did get a few goals towards the end of the season once he finally got his first one.
Like I have no problem with him being number 3. I want the Whitecaps to say he's number 3 and then keep him there. Otherwise, get rid of him and bring somebody. I don't want him to do number 4 and just sit there as a number 4. I want them to bring somebody else.
I don't think he wants to either.
No, exactly.
The reality is there still has to be at least 2 players who are better than Hurtado, who are playing in front of him. And I think Kyoto would be one of those players. Yeah. He could be your number 2. But I don't think he could be your number 1 striker.
I don't think he's used as either a lone striker or the primary striker at Olympia.
Talking about strikers, how easy is it going to be to? Because if they bring in strikers, they're going to have to unload Giles Barnes and possibly Kudo.
Well, there's rumours, and the latest rumour from a Houston newspaper was that there's 2 European clubs made advances to Vancouver for Barnes.
No,
you have to think Blackburn Rovers, that rumour with Owen Coyle.
Yeah.
I didn't even think Owen Coyle was going to be there by the time the transfer window came, but he's kind of picked things up a little bit, but still, you never know.
I don't think moving Giles Barnes will be a problem.
Okay. How about Kudo? What do you think of Kudo?
That's the big question, right? Yeah. And I don't doubt that if he chose that, he's been back in Japan for this off season. I think that if he goes anywhere, he'll be probably sent back to. I think someone would.
I think he's here next year. I think he's here.
So he'd probably be number 3 then.
But you're now. So if you're saying you're bringing in Kyoto and he's probably going to be in the $200,000 to $350,000 range for just, and I don't know if he necessarily deserves that coming from the Honduran League is not great. Olympia is a decent club, but he scored. I'm just looking it up now. He scored 36 goals in the last 78 games since 2014 with Olympia.
Pretty good rate.
Amazing scoring rate in a league where there's not particularly good defending.
Yeah,
Hurtado could score 30 in that league. So
are there bigger goals, then?
I don't.
But the thing is the whole thing about what he was talking about, his international play, his impressive play in there.
Yeah.
That's what get people.
His goal in the Olympics.
That's what I'm saying. He's
because nobody watches that many Honduran games in order to find out how good.
He's going to be paid more based on potential.
Yeah.
On the hope that he develops, that he can translate that into a higher league. I don't know if that's necessarily possible. That's what we were hoping for with Kudo.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to work out. So if you're now spending between Kudo and Kyoto around let's say $600,000 on your number 2 and number 3 strikers, that's a really poor contract decisions for what essentially is backup players.
Now that I know what his strike rate is, if he was a DP, maybe I wouldn't be too upset.
This is in the Honduran soccer league though. Like I've watched some of his YouTube stuff. Fair enough, but I've watched some of his YouTube stuff, and some of the defending is really, really bad. And there's bad defending in MLS too. But the Whitecaps have not shown
for the Whitecaps. So.
But the Whitecaps have not shown that they've been able to create advantageous situations for their strikers. Why do we think Kyoto would be any different than Kudo? Or because that's kind of the player Kudo is.
So that's some of our thoughts as to how the off-season has played out so far, some rumours about what's going to happen. Let's hear a little bit more concrete stuff now with our 4th annual chat with Carl Robinson, end of season chat. He's over in the UK at the moment, just took in Man City Arsenal today, and he's back with his family in Wales for a bit, so we've got him on the phone now. So let's hear from Whitecaps head coach Carl Robinson.
Yo, Carl Robinson, you're back again. If you do this again, pretty soon we'll be friends. You're the newest member of my Fully Sick faction. Got your rhymes locked, loaded, ready for action.
So I guess first thing to kind of ask you is, season's wrapped up now, it's kind of about 6 weeks old. What's your overriding thought of how the season played out?
Well, whenever you review a season, you always try and look for the positives, and there were plenty of positives. Obviously, we're qualifying for the Champions League. It was a great achievement. It was a first for us. Winning the Cascadia Cup, albeit on the last game of the season, that was good. But with all the positives, there was also some negatives, and the negatives for me were, obviously, we missed the playoffs. We didn't deserve to get in the playoffs based upon not being consistent enough in the latter part of the season. With 2.5 wins, 3 wins away from the playoffs. So we know we got to improve that, and obviously the heartbreaking loss with the Amway Canadian Championship. So on one hand you look at it and you think, right, okay, we're not too far away, because if we would have transferred 3 of them results into wins, which we quite easily could have, based upon giving away stupid goals in the last few minutes, and then held on for another 30 seconds in the Amway, then everyone would have been talking about, we've had a fantastic season. So, I'm not naive enough to think we've had a fantastic season. We need to improve individually. Players didn't play to their levels compared to the previous year, but for the 2 years prior, they had been absolutely excellent. So there was always going to be an expected dip. Unfortunately, a lot of them dipped at the same time. So my coach's job next year is to, 1, freshen it up, which we've done, and 2, to try and get those key players that have performed very, very well for us back up to speed as quick as we can.
I mean, this was your first season of any adversity, really, as a manager. What did you learn from that, and what has it done that's going to make you a better manager going forward?
I think in any walk of life, you've got to deal with adversity, and especially in football. Every manager that I spoke to, not just in MLS but in England, has has gone through it. And, the feedback I've got from him is it's important that you don't change who you are, don't change your characteristics, and don't change your beliefs. And I won't, and I didn't. So I learned a lot, not just about myself and my coaches, but also about the club and also about the players I have. And that's why come the end of the season, I thought, decisions needed to be made for the benefit of the group moving forward. So, self-reflection is a very, very big part in football. And if you're able to do it and accept responsibility, the responsibility is on me. I'm the manager of the football club, and us not getting results. Yeah, we can break it down into the players have got to perform, and but it's hard sometimes because you can't legislate for someone sleeping on a corner and not marking a player. You can't legislate for a centre forward missing a one-on-one opportunity or the referee making a bad decision. But I'm afraid that's the world that we live in, and you have to deal with it. And usually someone has to take responsibility, and I'm willing to do that for last year. That was me.
If you were going to pinpoint then some things that you feel that you yourself could have done better, what would you say?
I think when we went through a run, we had 5 very difficult away games, if I'm correct, and we were away in Trinidad, which we managed to get a result. And then we had Dallas away, Colorado away, Houston away, and I believe it was LA away. There were four very, very difficult games. And, we went to, I remember going to Dallas, I think was the first game, and trying to, not get beat. And then after going to Houston and following it up with a drab performance, really, again, with probably the same personnel. What I should have done with 4 away games is I probably should have totally changed the team. And it's easy said after the event, but there wasn't enough energy in those 4 away games. Having said that, the 4 away games come at a very, very difficult time, because if you split the 4 away games up throughout the 9 months of the season and you lose those 4 games, no one says nothing, because they are difficult away games. That factored in with the home loss to New England when we dominated the game, the goal given away in the last minute against Colorado at 2-2. I think it was 3 days literally after the Amway Canadian Championship. And probably Seattle at home as well, when I thought we dominated the game. So, those 4 away games, coupled in with 3 or 4, including the Montreal first game of the season, 3 or 4 key home games, makes me believe we're not that far away, based upon little minor adjustments and a little bit of tidy up in certain areas of the field. So that's what we'll focus on next year.
Now, you started the season, you had your 3 DPs, your Octavio, Pedro, Mati. There is a kind of feeling amongst a number of the fan base that a lot of those guys were maybe getting played when maybe weren't playing well and they maybe shouldn't have been in the team. Do you feel there's a pressure on you when you've got designated players to play them in the team?
I think most managers will say to you, you are judged on your designated players, and Mati, Pedro and Octavio, in the previous year, obviously Pedro had a few injuries and only played a certain amount of games, but Mati was arguably our best player last year with Kendall and David Ousted, and Octavio, for the first 4 months of the season was absolutely excellent, and then lost his way a little bit at the end of the season. So coming into this new year, new season, it was, you're always hoping that they can carry on the form from the previous year. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and at times, throughout the season, I did make decisions. The best thing I did was leave Matthias Laber out against Kansas City away from home, because since that game he responded fantastically well, but maybe I could have done that a little bit earlier. We talk about hindsight. Same with Pedro, obviously losing Octavio in July. June, July, when he decides to go back home to Colo Colo, then obviously, that was a decision taken out of our hands because we didn't need to leave him out. So I think all managers will get judged on it.
So, looking at Pedro, Pedro's moved on now. The decision, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but making him captain, do you think that was the best decision? Or, once you made him captain, obviously you couldn't really take it away from him, but do you feel that you maybe should have gone with a stronger choice?
No, not at all. I think it was the right decision, based at the right time. I think Pedro done a wonderful job being the captain. When you're captain, you're always open for criticism, and there's a number of captains. There's a captain that shouts and rants and raves. There's a captain that doesn't, who leads by example, and there's captains that lead by their play. And Pedro was a captain that led by his play, and the way he was. People didn't see his day-to-day stuff that he did with the rest of the group. The vocal side of it, Pedro didn't have in his game. But I knew that leading up to making him captain and sticking by that decision. So having said that, the other players that are candidates or were captains at certain times, David Ousted, he's got a lot of strong qualities, but there's parts of his game that obviously is missing, and Kendall Waston the same. Kendall Waston, when he was captain, had a more disciplined composure about him, which from a manager's point of view, you look at it and think, well, that's excellent that he's able to play like that as captain 3 or 4 times. Why can't he play like that when he's not captain? Because being the captain should not change your performance. So there's a number of things that I always look into and review. But I've got no problems with Pedro being the captain for the football club for 3 years while he was here.
Of course, you lost another DP in the summer when Octavio moved on, and then like what we were just talking about there, like there wasn't a replacement brought in. You look at, say, Seattle that brought in Ladero and the difference that he made. You tried to bring in Fabian Espindola, and obviously that didn't really go very well. But do you wish you had managed to keep hold of him, or at least brought somebody else in?
From a selfish point of view, Octavio was hitting form at that time. After a slowish start, he managed to score 3 goals, I believe, in 4 games. But in the early part of the season, I spoke to Octavio, and we had a very open and honest conversation. And a lot of time for the kid, I really have. And he told me what he felt. And do you want to keep a player that doesn't really want to be here, or do you want to try and slog a dead horse? And he'd made his mind up that it was right for him to move, and we had to try and get the best deal for us and the club, and that's what we did. And would I like to kept him? Well, of course, because Octavio, if we could have had the first 6, 7, 8 games of the season 2 years ago, Octavio was unplayable. I think he's shown now he's gone back. He's more comfortable being back in Chile, and he's scoring goals and playing very well. So it was the right decision. Obviously, there's always one team that might lose out, and us not being able to find a replacement to score goals, it was us. But, we don't regret the decision one bit.
The whole thing with Espindola, is that just kind of like one of the quirks at MLS, that you just can't get deals like that done because you can't speak to the guy beforehand?
Yeah, it's a can of worms, isn't it? Because the reality is, in football, everyone knows everyone, and if you want to speak to a manager or you want to speak to a player, you can. But, you follow the rules based upon.
Talking about strikers, do you feel that you had the right strikers for the system that you're wanting to play? Like, do they fit into that system? Or are you needing to look at maybe changing the system? And you've always said to me you don't get caught up in formations. But, I mean, are you thinking about maybe tinkering, maybe even going 5 at the back?
No, not really. Based upon personnel that we have, and again, I'll reiterate, I don't get caught up in systems, because if you look at the majority of teams in Major League Soccer, they play the system that I played for 3 years, the 4-2-3-1. You look at Seattle, they played it. Toronto didn't, but they did to start the season. They only changed it based upon personnel with maybe 8 or 10 games to go. And they were playing a 4-3-3 with a diamond sort of shape formation. So Dallas do, Real Salt Lake do, Portland Timbers do, Columbus Crew do, New England do, so New York Red Bulls do. So a lot of teams do. That's not the reason I play it. The reason I play it is because we try to put players in positions that suited them very well. And, to an extent, we do that when players are playing in form. Unfortunately, we weren't hitting or getting to the levels that we wanted to last year on a regular basis. So then there were slight adjustments, me playing Pedro as an 8 rather than a 10 and bringing Mosqueda in. And obviously also the wingers then playing up to their level. So, I played 4-4-2 3 or 4 times. But again, it's about players. It's not and personnel. It's not about systems. If I sign 2 designated player centre forwards, there's a probably good chance I'm going to play a 4-4-2 because you put your players. Ideally, you want to play your designated players. Well, you want to play your designated players for a reason. So systems are based upon personnel. 4-4-2, 4-3-3, or a 4-2-3-1 are pretty similar, just based upon in and out of possession.
Well, like looking at players possibly coming in, you've been on your travels, you were down in Brazil and Argentina. Yeah. How productive was that for you?
It was excellent. It was an excellent trip, 12-day trip, based upon seeing the standards of players. There's some exceptional young players there. Obviously, they're worth a lot of money. And there's some exceptional older, talented players. And, the market is strong. And the market is expensive. That's the problem you have. So you're trying to find deals within the country. And sometimes, if you got a player that's playing regular and a player that's playing on form and scoring lots of goals, then you have to pay more money for him. Or you go for a player that's not in the team, that's not playing well. But then the consensus is, well, why are you signing a player that's not playing regular? Well, unfortunately, we haven't got millions to spend, so we have to try and be productive with our recruitment, and we are. The players that we've brought in up to date, predominantly have been very successful. The ones that we've spent money on. So, there are targets, there are obviously boundaries which we have, and it's all based upon budgets. But we'll try and find the best players suited, and we won't forget about looking inside the league as well, because I think there's a number of teams that have shown inside the league. If you get a core of players inside, then they're able to deal with a little bit of adversity during the season. So we'll look inside. We'll look to try and add 1 or 2 from outside the league, but we won't be spending millions and millions like Seattle did on Ladero.
Would you see yourself though filling the 2 DP spots?
You're always trying to make your squad stronger. So there's conversations that happen on a daily basis with myself, Greg, Bobby, and ownership, and we're looking to strengthen the squad without actually putting blocks in the pathways of our younger players. We're going to go young. We will go young next year. We've got a young nucleus of, as I mentioned before, Tim Parker, Christian Dean. We've got Matthias Labber, we've got Russell Tiebert, we've got Teixeira, we've got Kakuta, we've got Eric Hurtado, we're bringing in Carl Gregg, we're bringing in, obviously, Spencer Ritchie. So we've got a really good group of young players. We will continue to build and grow with them. And we've got to get the right senior players in around them, because, obviously, we've lost Pedro, we've lost Blas Perez. We've made two of the loans have ended in Jordan Smith and Fraser Aid, and there might be 1 or 2 more moves on the way as well. So it's important you get the right balance, but we won't go away from our younger players. The younger players will make up, a lot of our roster next year as well.
Looking at the players that's available, there's a lot of free agents available at the moment. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you've not been able to convince Robbie Keane to come, but is there any other names on that list that, obviously you're not going to tell me their names, but are there players on that list that's interesting you just now?
Yeah, I've spoke to a number of out-of-contract players it's allowed me to, after the MLS Cup final. Obviously, you're allowed to then speak to them. So I have spoke to a number of them, and we've had some productive conversations. These players individually have got to make their own decisions, and there are a number of factors that go into it, because the free agents are obviously older guys, older players who have families, who have to make decisions based upon families, but also based upon money. If they're going to sample the free agency market, it's for a reason. It's either the current club doesn't want to keep them, or they feel they can get more money elsewhere at another club. And I've been the victim of losing a player And obviously there's advantages of trying to gain players. So I have spoke to a number of them. You know, we won't overpay. That's important to know because that goes against what we do. But we will try and obviously tempt one or two of them to join our squad.
And I would take it Robbie Keane's not one of those guys.
Well, I think everyone talks about Robbie because of the relationship I have with him, and I've known him for years. You know, Robbie is a free agent. We know he's a fantastic footballer. We know he's arguably the best designated player this league has ever seen. So, you know, is he interesting? Of course he is. You know, but obviously Robbie was on a lot of money in LA Galaxy. So, you know, Robbie and his family will have decisions to make. I know he's got options outside of the league in some very, very weird and wonderful places. So, you know, Robbie will decide what he wants to do later on the line. But I'm always interested in good players. And Robbie certainly is that.
There's always lots of rumours floating about. And, like, one of the big ones at the moment is Romel Kyoto. Honduras press have basically said it's a done deal. I know you probably can't confirm anything either way, but, I mean, is he a player that you have looked at?
Well, obviously, Romel was here when we played against him. He got injured. We looked after him fantastically well. You know, he had a severe injury, and the club took him under their wing, and we looked after him. And, you know, he is someone that I know very well. But I will clarify, we have not signed him. So that'll put that to bed.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, looking at the striking department, obviously you've got Giles Barnes at the moment. He's on a big salary. You've got Kudo. You've re-signed Eric Hurtado. Does that leave the number of striking options just like you're just looking for one new striker, or are you looking for maybe a couple?
We're definitely going to bring in one, and there might be room to bring in two, based upon if we decide to just shake things up a little bit or move some things about. So we're definitely looking at one, maybe two.
Now, you can't say too much about this because I don't want to get you fined, but the MLS referees have obviously been dreadful this year. Your bench and obviously the New York bench are kind of highlighted as maybe two of the more vocal benches against the referees. Do you feel that maybe goes against Vancouver a little bit, and does it maybe then carry on to the players that they see how upset you get with the referees, and players like Kendo and stuff, they maybe get a bit upset with them as well?
No, not at all. Listen, it's made me chuckle this season because I got sent off against New York.
Yeah.
For arguing a throw-in, which was our throw-in, after being warned 3 times, which I wasn't. So it made me chuckle because the new rules that come in are there for a reason. And someone had mentioned to me that our bench had got highlighted along with New York. Well, if you look at every team or every game in MLS, there's a hell of a lot worse than our bench. And not once do I swear or criticise referees when I'm on the sideline. Am I emotional? Yeah. Am I demanding? Yeah. But not once do I slaughter them in any shape or form. But I watch loads of games in MLS, and it makes me chuckle when I see that some things don't get pulled up and other things do. You know, and I'm all for the respect factor for referees. It needs to be there, and I have that for them. But it needs to be across the board, because that's one thing I was fortunate enough to do the MLS Cup final as well as the MLS conference final, Toronto and Montreal. And I said, in both of them games, the refereeing, the officiating was excellent. And I said to Alan Kelly after the MLS Cup final, it was a joy to watch him, because he let the game go. He pulled it up when it needed to be. But that's not how the season was refereed. So, you know, that's something that I will speak to Jeff when we're on the subcommittees and other coaches, because it's about the players. It's not about the refs. It's not about the managers. It's about the players playing. We've got to make sure that it is about the players, because, you know, they're the ones that are in the limelight all the time.
You talked about being at the MLS Cup there. With Seattle winning it this year, with Portland winning it last year, how much extra pressure does that put on you now?
No, none. Listen, it's one team wins it out of 20. So obviously it puts pressure on all the other teams to win it, not just us, just because the two neighbours up the road have won it, and so I give Seattle a lot of credit. You know, you could look at it a number of ways. There's no extra pressure on us. You know, we want to obviously try and do as best as we can. There's pressure on all the other teams to try and win MLS. So, you know, I congratulate Seattle. You know, they've done it the hard way, which Portland did it the year before. So it just gives us hope. It shows how strong the Pacific Northwest is, and we've got to try and go after our first title, but so have a number of other teams.
You're over in the UK at the moment. What's your plans for over Christmas, the next couple of weeks? Obviously, there was some nice rumours about you being linked with Swansea, but I'm sure that's not why you're there.
Well, apparently I am, yeah. So that's what I keep getting told. But my plans in the UK are I'm going to watch a couple of games. I also penciled in to go and watch 2 Premier League teams train, speak to their managers. So there's a lot of, and there's 2 other games that I need to watch in regards to players. So there's a lot of driving around and things like that. So I'll do that, but there'll be a lot of learning as well, speaking to the managers and watching the way they do things on the training field is an important part of my development as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your trip. Have a great Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year.
Okay, thanks, mate.
That's great.
And you too, Michael.
Thanks for your patience.
Okay, no worries.
Cheers.
Oh, guess who's been on match of the day? You have in your big show. I said, guess who's been on match of the day? You have in your big show. Yes, I've been on match of the day because I've got very big shows.
So I want to say a big thanks to Carl Robinson for taking time out to speak to us there.
On the road.
And as you may have gathered, maybe not, depending on how well we've edited that, there was a lot of, the calls dropped a lot.
Lots of chop and changing there.
Yeah, not a lot of good service in the UK for the mobile network, especially in Wales. That doesn't bode well for our trip there in January.
Those massive mountains.
So hopefully you got the gist of most of the answers. It was a bit stop and start. I think we kind of did it in about six takes there. But, I mean, the guys were listening to it. What was your thoughts there from what Robbo said?
Well, one of the bigger things was, and he reiterated this really clearly, that he was not under any pressure, despite Seattle and Portland winning. And you expect him to say that, but still, I think that was pretty telling thing, that he's just going to play like he's playing every year.
It's probably
probably the best thing to do.
For as the manager, it's probably the right thing to say. You know, if he in his heart felt like he was a true, you know, Vancouver Whitecap, you know, that he bled, you would think that it would really bother him. I hope it does. That his closest rivals are the ones who are most successful right now, and it's okay for the manager to not admit that publicly. It's okay for him to say, no, we're going to do our business the same way next year. You know, we have a plan. We have a good plan, we think, and that's what we're going to do. No matter what, whoever wins the MLS Cup, it doesn't matter. If it's not us, then we have to improve to get there. That's kind of the correct thing to say. It's not how I feel, and I hope it's not how the club feels when they're not talking to media. I hope they all are really pissed off that right now they are the also-rans of all of our closest rivals.
Well, this is a front office who once said in an interview that they don't understand why people get so upset when your team doesn't win. But I think in terms of what Robbo just said, I think that he's being true to himself. Like I think he's confident in what he's doing, and he's confident in his methods and in learning lessons from when things don't go well. And so that's why I think he doesn't feel like there's more added pressure than there already kind of exists in his position.
Carl seems like generally around all the footballing circles around the world, around the MLS, the players, the coaches, people seem to like him. And I think one of the reasons is he answers those kinds of questions. He says, no, I'm happy for, congratulations to Seattle, they deserved it, yada yada. I would never say that because I'm a petulant little child, but he's not, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's very progressive in that way, and that he keeping these relationships close, which makes the next one of the next questions he answered about officiating I found really funny, because if you take that same mindset that he has, that I think he has with that, to the officiating, you think he would say, guys, we can't control the officiating, so you got to accept whatever they give you. And like, the last thing that's going to work is berating the officials. Now, Robbo doesn't deserve to be. I believe him that he wasn't warned 3 times. That he a lot of the stuff that's come their way has been totally unjust, and I agree with that. But yelling at the refs on the game, during the game, isn't going to help anything, and the only thing that it does is allows players like Kendall Waston to think, I can disrespect the officials. And do you think that helps Kendall at all with his reputation with the officials? I mean, it's come out before in social media circles that the Whitecaps specifically, and specifically a couple players on the Whitecaps, have been noted by the disciplinary committee and the officials. The officials all meet and they talk about players that they're targeting because they know they frequently go outside the rules of the game, and they target those players. And Whitecaps players are some of those. So do you think that berating the officials or yelling at them is going to help in any way? I think I wish it's something that they kind of improved upon. I know it's kind of an old school mentality amongst coaches and around the world. You see that all the time. I just don't think it's very helpful.
I think, though, Jay, that his response is, again, his response to that question is very true to himself. He's a very honest fellow. Like, he's a very honest person. And so what he was trying to say is, look, my observation is a lot worse happens, and we're being singled out.
I agree with that.
That's hard to take.
But the venue to air those grievances is not at the 73rd minute of a game when something isn't going your way.
Yeah, but the thing is, he said, he gets emotional, and it's hard to control his emotions when you're on the pitch and you're seeing this stuff happen. When in the back of your mind, like you said, he sees stuff on TV, and he sees stuff on TV. Things are not happening. If that was happening right now, it would be a different story. And so he gets emotional about that.
I mean, there was a lot of things that he said there. Always appreciate his honesty with us. He's always been since he took over. And he said it's going to be a young team again. Wouldn't confirm that there was any kind of arrivals imminent, and said the Kyoto deal so far is not a done deal. It is a little worrying that we're going to be really young again. He wants to get a couple of veterans around that. Is that enough to have a better performance? It's all going to depend on who he brings in. Was interesting as well, I thought, that he mentioned about he said a couple of times about bringing in 2 possible DP strikers.
Yeah, that means people are moving on.
Which, if you brought in 2 DP strikers and you want to bring in a DP number 10, you're looking at buying down Matty Laba.
I think that was almost a hypothetical if we brought in... I think he was trying to drive home the point that if he finds 2 amazing strikers and they sign them on DP contracts, well, we'll be playing a 4-4-2. He doesn't care the lineup particularly. Yeah. He cares about getting quality players on the pitch who can play together. It would shock me if they got 2 DP strikers. I think it's pretty evident that there'll be at least one of those will be a midfielder of the DP positions.
Yeah, you'd think it would have to be. The other thing as well, he's in the UK at the moment, so he mentioned there's 2 games he's going to take in where he's actually looking at players. So it may be a couple of players that we have actually heard of that are coming in. You would hope if he's bringing in a DP striker, it's going to be...
I think the striker will... Not everybody's going to know about him, but people who follow football very closely will know him.
Yeah. I always keep thinking a couple of really good UK strikers, which are probably way out the Whitecaps budget. Lee Griffiths at Celtic. He's been in and out of the team there with the way that Dembele's been playing. Bit of a head case. Yeah, he's got a few kids by different women, but hey, that's who doesn't?
He'd enjoy the Roxy then.
Yeah.
You should bring him right along.
But he knows the way to the back of the net. And a few other places as well. Andy Carroll.
Comfortable in the box,
yeah.
and you would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but can he stay healthy? That's the problem.
Yeah, Andy
That's
Carroll
the
at West Ham
question.
would be fantastic. Nice, big, tall, striker guy.
You
Although
just want him off West Ham's payroll.
I like him. I just wish he would be healthy. But anyway, thanks to Carol for doing that. Let's wrap up this episode of the podcast now. We're going to be back with a few more in quick succession. We're going to have our Christmas special coming out. Then we're going to have a podcast looking at the season past and a little nudge to what's going to happen in the future. So just before we go, just let everyone know where they can find you online this snowy Sunday.
You can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat.
I'm available at JAY_Duke.
On Twitter, I'm at Zachary AM, and I'm part of a movement called Curva Collective.
And what's the Curva Collective's Twitter handle?
At Curva Collective.
And you're the leader, right?
No, I'm definitely not
honcho?
The president?
Head honcho.
The president of the honcho?
I'm Michael McCall. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read all our stuff away from the numbers, aftn.ca. I'm also the Whitecaps beat reporter for MLSsoccer.com and also for Goal.com. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe in the snow out there. And until next time,
On the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.